Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Hi, friends, and welcome to the next chapter with Charlie. Our guest today is Trey Tiji, serial entrepreneur and explorer of ideas about the depth of who we are and how we interact with life psychologically, mindfully, and soulfully. Like me, Trey is a ponderer. And for that reason, I very much look forward to an enchanting and thoughtful conversation. Let's get him on the show. Trey Tiji, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Thank you so much for having me, Charlie. I am glowing off of our pre-call yesterday, and from that momentum, I look forward to keeping that pace up today.
That was a fun call. I must admit that was kind of a unique call, even for me. And I've done a handful of these, and I like the call. It was engaging for me as well. So I look forward to a very engaging chat. You
Ditto.
have for a young man, you have lots to say and lots to think about. I so appreciate your intelligence and your curiosity. Now I notice, a big thing in your life is imagination, and you're wearing a hat. Does it say imagination coach on it?
It sure does.
Imagination coach.
hmm
That why don't we start there, since since it's glowing at us, and imagination is so huge, and it's awkward to start there because we're starting without content. We're starting right in the middle of process, but maybe we'll come back to it as we do more on content. But talk to me about imagination. I'm big into curiosity and imagination and wonder thinking, so you're really speaking my language. I want to know what you have to say about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having me. This is going to be a blast. So, yes, we are diving into the imagination without context. I think you know, the the context is it can be on an individual as needed basis, as a per person basis, but
Mm-hmm.
at a high level, the way that I see imagination is it is very much intertwined with the deep questions that are personal and deep for me, like what is God and what is the creator and creation and what is this external life that I'm experiencing outside of me. When I studied the imagination and have really chipped away at the beliefs that I now hold, and I've challenged a lot of the current beliefs or the former beliefs that I held. The imagination is what really sticks with me the most. And so the way I like to think about it is the imagination is a tool in which we get closer to that creator power that we sometimes as humans define as God or the universe or what have you.
Sure,
And
sure,
so in
yeah.
my line of work, the reason why my hat says imagination coach is partly some of the work that I do with individuals is working on their imagination. Oftentimes when I work with adults, the imagination conversation often comes up as, well, it's just something that I use to daydream, or maybe it's just kind of like idle fantasy. It just kind of runs and I don't really think about it. But the imagination can be so much more impactful and monumental in your everyday life if you let it.
You know, Let me tell you a story. I hate to start off with me talking a lot, but there's a story from there's a story in the Bible that is very cool, that has a lot to do with imagination, and it's all in the creation narrative and the creation myth in Genesis. Now, after God created the planet in 6 days and rested on the seventh day, but after every day, it is preached by a lot of preachers as God said it was good. That's a bad interpretation. God did not say it was good. It's even cooler. God observed. God saw that it was good. And God saw that each day was an expression from his imagination
Mm.
under what the planet would look like if it was according to his image. And it's a beautiful image of God's use of imagination, his wonder as an artist. And I look at it as if God is an artist, and after 6 days, he sat back on the seventh day and he goes, damn, that's pretty good work. And it was all from the imagination and the spirit of God. What do you think about that?
I think you're right up my alley using the Bible to talk about imagination and the power of imagination. I like to reference the Bible when I'm talking about things. So a really core belief that I have is that the I amness is the strongest declaration that humans can make, and I am is so much intertwined in the Bible. Um, there's a passage that says, "Be still and know that I am." There's a point in which Jacob is wrestling with God, and Jacob asks him, "Who should I say blessed me?" After they're done wrestling, and he's blessed, and God says to Jacob, tell the people that I am. And so the reason why I use the Bible for a lot of that, for a lot of what I teach about the I amness that we have, is that we all hear that the stories that we tell ourselves and the inner narratives really create our reality or control our experience in life. And when I work with people, oftentimes their knowledge about those particular narratives or about those stories is very nascent, it's very underdeveloped. And so, really, how you can look at it is if you're thinking about like a table has a top and then it has the legs that supports it. The I ams that we hold as humans, whether it's I am, I'm going to take all the negatives first and foremost, but it's going to be like I am not good enough, or I am
Hmm.
in danger, or I am not safe, or I
How
am
true.
bad. There are a lot of these declarations that we as humans make early on in childhood and in our human experience that then become sort of an identity in which we live from, a state of being in which we live from,
Great
because
insight, bro.
during all of our experience in life, we have those legs of the table coming in as limiting beliefs that then support that top table of whatever the I am statement is.
Oh, that's powerful. Because we do think there is so much of I am ellipsis, but it is I am not enough. And that is just untrue.
Right.
You are created enough. In that verse, in the original verse in Exodus where God makes a statement that I am. Do you know how that's translated? How that can be translated two ways from the Hebrew. You know, Fortunately, I get to go to seminary just to study Greek and Hebrew,
Wow.
and that was funny to learn. Fun to learn the text and bits of the text in the original language, and that is it is written more accurately is I will be who I will
Mm.
be.
Mm.
So they work together. They're hand in hand. I don't think one is taking precedence over the other. I think there is an I amness, but there is also is an I will be-ness to God. Watch me work. Watch me. And that's kind of like, isn't that, what if we had that idea is I will be. Watch me. I will be because I am enough. I am essential. I am in the image
Mm.
of God. And what do you think about those thoughts?
So if you part of my belief is that your circumstances are an accumulation of what your thoughts are internally, what your beliefs are, and what you assume to be true either about you or about your place in the world. There's something called the law of assumption. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
I'm not. Inform me.
so the law of assumption is essentially act as if. And so you assume the state of being, like, for example, I have a 2-year-old daughter. As you know, we talked a little bit about it yesterday. And I have an 8-year-old daughter. And they love playing with each other. They absolutely love it. But a few months ago, I had to correct my oldest when she was playing with my youngest because there was this thing that they were playing where my youngest was the doctor. or my oldest was the doctor. But in order to have the doctor, you needed the sick patient. And so my girls would run around my house saying, I'm sick, I'm sick, I'm sick. And with someone like me that understands the power of language and words and also the identification of I am, which is I'm, right? In that situation, in that context, I asked my 8-year-old daughter, hey, can y'all play something that has you pretending to be I'm strong or I'm successful or I am
Mm-hmm.
something else other than sick. Because to your point, when the translation is I will be, I think it makes perfect sense why the translation is I will be, because when you declare something internally like I am sick, you are like God did on the seventh day. God rested and said, it is done. He essentially claimed it is done because the whole
Mm-hmm.
creation
Mm-hmm.
was done.
Mm-hmm.
As you declare, I am sick, for this example, internally in your consciousness, you are also declaring that it is done. If you're living from the state of sickness, then you are assuming the state of being from sickness. So then your circumstances will show you and reflect back to you that you are indeed sick. And I like to ask a lot of people the question of, do you believe that you can think yourself into sickness? So for you, Charlie, do you believe that? Do you believe it's possible to think yourself into sickness?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I would agree. And 95% of the people I ask that question to, they answer yes as well. And so the opposite, if I ask the opposite sometimes, if you believe that you can think yourself into sickness, do you believe that you can think yourself into health, into perfect health? And some people have a little more trouble with accepting that, but if you accept one is true, the other is going to be
Yeah.
true as well. And so it
Yeah.
really just helps people tease out what they really believe in at the core level rather than what they're telling you what they believe in at the programming level.
How helpful. How helpful. What is the people group that you are serving? Who do you find calling you for such incredible information as you're giving?
Well, I mean, realistically, it's people that are stuck, that are suffering from their own demise, their own self-destruction. It's people that feel lost after disruption, whether it's a divorce, whether it's a loss of a parent, a loss of a child. People. It's funny. It's not funny. It's part of the human experience when we get disrupted in life. I live by this motto that you either disrupt life or you get disrupted, but either way, you're getting disrupted. And so the way that I've lived my life is just looking constantly for ways to disrupt my patterns, my way of thinking, my everyday experiences, because I've found that those disruptions often lead to new experiences and new thought patterns. And for whatever reason, those new experiences and new thought patterns lead to more solutions in my life. They lead to more free feelings and they lead to betterment. And so that's kind of what I've focused on. And to answer your question, yeah, I mean, typically it doesn't have to be only men or only women. It's a mixture of the two. And it's generally people that know, that have a really deep sense of knowing that there's something that they're missing, that there's just something that's not clicking with them as far as their experience is concerned in life. And I'm here to help them put that together, put form to that.
That is so helpful and that's so informative because we live in a culture, an individual culture of judgment that
Hmm.
others, we are placed under the judgment of others and we can let that judgment impact us.
Hmm.
But that is not just because somebody says something, feels something, or attributes something to us does not make it true. It is a choice, and we get a choice. And you seem to be a big advocate of choice, and I love that idea. And what you're expressing right now is the idea of how we get to choose. Are we going to be I am not enough,
Hmm.
or I am maybe not? You don't say I am I am enough to the state that I can fulfill my potential.
Hmm.
There's always growth opportunities. And I think that's something you mentioned in one of your places as you talk about growth and potential opportunities.
Yeah, Charlie, it's great that you brought that up. The age-old debate of free will versus
Determinism.
destiny. When that question's asked to me, I used to kind of debate it and fall into the mind process that we all do, whether it's free will or whether it's destiny. I've come at it from both angles. My answer now, as of a few months ago, has really changed, and it has everything to do with how you just framed what I said previously. And free will to me, often free will, as I thought about it previously, free will meant like the ability to act, or it might have been to move and to have mobility in the world, right? That's what free will is, to be able to choose what I'm doing and who I'm with and where I'm at. But actually, free will to me now is exactly how you just put form to it. It's exactly what you just defined. Free will to me has nothing to do with your mobility in the world or choosing. Free will has everything to do with choosing inside of yourself the state of consciousness, the state of being that you want to live from, that aligns with your deepest desires or aligns with the life that you want to live. And because you're only forever here now, you don't exist in the past and you don't exist in the future, because you're only ever here now, as long as you practice that mindfulness and are in the present moment, then you always have a choice to choose what state of being to live from. And that to me is free will, because ultimately, when you choose what state to live from, you create your reality. And because you know the Bible, there's a story. I believe it was either Joshua, I think it was Joshua, where he was sold into slavery by his brothers.
Joseph.
And Joseph. So Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, and he was thrown in the lion's den from the king, I believe. Joseph was the pure example of being thrown into suffering consistently by circumstances. But Joseph remained steadfast in his conviction that he was free and that he was doing the Lord's work. He was doing God's work. And ultimately, God put Joseph in that power, in that position of power that he ultimately saw through. And I like to think of that story because it really, where a lot of us have it messed up is we are reacting or responding to our circumstances as if our circumstances have permanence to them. They're permanent, and they're not. Our circumstances are actually
Great
fluid,
insight.
and circumstances are actually responding every second to our internal.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Like, I really like that. How familiar are you with Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning?
Not as much as I could be, but I am somewhat.
Yeah, that'd be a read for you. With you, that'd be a read for you too. Not just to read, but I can tell you read like I do. You ponder the reading.
Mm,
You read it, and then it's highlighted, and then you go back and review it, and you may take journal notes on it. But Viktor Frankl was in Auschwitz, and so he was in a German prison camp, and they had total control. And the one thing he said, I cannot control my circumstances. But I can control my inner being and how I accept them, what I do with them, and how they form me. I can control my inner self, and that's the essence of man's search for meaning. That is that we have a say in in your terms, in our destiny.
yeah.
That we have a say in forming that and in creating that and establishing that. So you're right in line with the great thinkers of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to the great thinker, I would add that the illusion of control is very real, and the way that we relate to the word control as humans, I think, is very muddy. And so I would invite Victor, I don't think he's alive, but
No, he's not.
I would invite him to maybe shift from the word control to focus. And because you're not like when you think of the word control, we're thinking of forcing things. We're thinking of struggle.
Right.
We're relating to all of these other words that signify some sort of wrestling with. Whereas when you understand like what you focus on expands, then you can understand that you actually don't have to focus on controlling anything. If you focus on the fact that God works miracles, and the closer that you can live to God, living in pure possibility rather than probability, which is using your mind, then you can allow for circumstances to rearrange themselves in a way that give you your deepest desires, or that bring you deeper sense of identity in life, or bring you deeper connections with the external.
That's wonderful. That's I like that you live, that it's not control, it's focus. It's there's not supposed to be silence on air, and yet I'm a ponderer, and so sometimes I can have, oh goodness, I'm on air, I've got to talk. Um, is that I
I
think I like the idea of focus and of establishing sort of a baseline. And that is my baseline where I believe in possibility. I believe in opportunities. I believe in personal development and growth, and that I can move forward. And as long as I take those become my buoys, my anchor weights, my place where
Hmm.
I can land to, and then I can just expand and try anything, because I am a trier, and believe me when I say I'm a trier, I'm an experimenter. I I will do all sorts of new and fascinating things, shall we say.
As you should. I mean, that's what we're being here to experience things and to express ourselves really allows for deeper levels of connection, not just within our own selves, but as we connect with the external, we do that through expressing ourselves. We do that with receiving. And, oftentimes when I do work with people, at the end of kind of working with me, it's very easy to see how much you're in your own way. And you also
Hmm.
realize that it's never anybody or anything that's in your own way. It's only ever you that's in your own way. It's only ever you that limits yourself. And the to the person that may be listening to this that is blaming, or that gets stuck in a pattern of blaming external people or external factors for their circumstances, the victim mentality is something I think also that is a very big program that we've all just accepted as true, especially to your point earlier in the conversation from the cultural perspective. I think nowadays it's so congratulated to be a victim of the next thing,
Oh
or
my
or,
God.
or what have
Oh
you.
my God.
How do
Yeah.
you feel about that personally?
How do I feel about the victim mentality?
Yeah, well, just
Very
how it's so
similar, very
ingrained in the
similar to
culture.
you. I think it does no good. It is not a helpful thought. So if I'm a victim, there's nothing I can do. I'm
Hmm.
stuck. And and I never accept that. I accept that there's always opportunity, there's always something different. I may go into a woe is me moment, but things are different when you get old, bro. It's like, I don't have room for that. I don't have time for that in my life.
Hmm.
So I want to experiment. I want to try to change. I want something new. You know what I want to do? I'm gonna take our conversation in a different direction now.
Sure.
And I want to go into the Trey context and talk a bit about you. Your ideas are brilliant, but I want to know, and not but, and I want to know something I observed in your resume. And I'm not sure how many of your hosts have observed this in your resume, but I put together, it's the way I organize thoughts. Now,
Sure.
you have an impressive list of companies that you have founded. You are an entrepreneur, and you founded half dozen or more companies by 31 years old, which is just shocking to me, or 32, whatever you are. That is shocking. And these companies include pet grooming, blockchain, cybersecurity. But I'll tell you what grabbed my attention. What grabbed my attention was your interest in founding a cannabis, or working with a new cannabis company, and also with a company that provided educational and experiential events around psychedelics. So, what this tells me, what this indicates to me, is these two companies, these two endeavors, indicate that you seem to have interest in alternative forms of thinking and perceiving,
Mm.
out of the box thinking and perceiving. Did I catch that? Was that snuck into your resume somehow?
You caught it, and it definitely highlights my curiosity of altered states of consciousness
Mm-hmm.
and alternative healing modalities and holistic health, and realizing, I think those endeavors were a big unfolding process for me to really realize that we're all made perfectly. We all have what's inside of us already that we are going to need in this journey of life. And yeah, so ask away. I love talking about that point in my life because, as we talked a little bit prior, experiential medicine and experiential events is really something that is really close to my heart.
What led you there?
Um, a personal story of healing with cannabis and the fact that um, I had a very challenging relationship with authority from a very young age, and so the medical industry and the healthcare system and even health insurance really left a bad taste in my mouth. And so I was faced with a choice when I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis disease at 18. Well, do I accept as true what these people are telling me, or do I not and choose how I want my life to be? And I chose the latter. And unfortunately, but fortunately as well, I didn't have someone like myself to really coach me through that time. I had to figure out a whole lot of things on my own. But ultimately, what led me to that business was that personal recovery story, or that healing journey, where cannabis put me in a state of remission and nothing else in the medical field was able to contend with that autoimmune disease.
That is, I was thinking this is a reflection of what you said earlier. And all I can say is that because I can't remember what it made me think of. I had it in my mind quickly, and then, that's part of old age. Shit goes away. It doesn't stay there with you very long. Um, but, but what are you, so you entered the alternative modes of thinking through through something that was necessary. I know what you're saying. You practice what you preach. When you tell people, can you think yourself into healing? You thought yourself into healing with the assistance of cannabis.
Sure. Yeah.
But it was that
Yeah.
you had medical aid or herbal aid to get you there, but it was you thinking yourself into that process, thinking, I'm not going to accept this. All the experts tell me I need to accept this, and you refuse to accept that. That is wonderful. That seems to be where you came up with, or that it just plays into what you believe about thinking. When you tell people like you can think yourself into health, you did that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll also add that, the experiential events, I started my cannabis career with a software company, and then I pivoted over to an educational platform where I was doing in-person events. Primarily, I was focused on the B2B sector, so I was helping individuals get into the business because I heard a lot of stories about I healed myself with cannabis, so I want to help others, or the story was someone in my family healed from cannabis and I want to help other people. And so it was just a story built on helping others, and I really clinged to that. So I wanted to help others get into the business. That's where the event started. And then when COVID happened in 2020, that's when that event's business had to close down. And then I opened back up in 2021, I believe, and did a couple of events that were just primarily experiential focused for consumers. So I would invite attendees to come in and do whether it was like a breath work type of session where it's almost as if you're on cannabis, you have that kind of exhilarating feeling internally, but you're able to manufacture that completely just using your breath internally. And then we had people do some mindfulness practices and meditations that were guided by two practitioners that I had, some different stretching, and just really helping people live in the body and forget about the past or the future, or forget about the obligations or the necessities or the pressure that we feel from the external, and just bring people into kind of like an experiential healing environment. And so that combined with the psychedelics use, psychedelics, I've been in psychedelics since probably 2017, I think, 2018. And from a consumer, at least, the adventures that I go on can be quite powerful. They can be quite
Oh my.
challenging because it's such an abrasive approach to the inner work.
Oh,
Whereas,
really? You found it abrasive. How so?
well, because, there's this saying that the growth that you're looking for is in the work that you're avoiding. And
That's
psychedelics
that you. That's a deep statement to just make. The growth you're looking for
is in the
is
is in the work you're avoiding.
is in the work you are avoiding. Oh my goodness, that is so true.
That's
That
right.
is so true.
But to answer your question, the psychedelics, they don't give you a choice to kind of warm up to the confrontation. They just put you there. Like they just zoom you into the confrontation. And you said something earlier that really resonated with me that I guess I hadn't really put together until now. But it was in that period of time when I was doing a lot of psychedelics in the early
Hmm.
2020s, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was looking for the download of information. That's really what
Right.
I was looking for, receiving information quicker, at a higher level, at a deeper level, whatever it was. I was looking to download more. And so psychedelics for me are a relationship with that which accelerates me in my internal growth. And for other people, the relationship that they might have with it might be intimidation, it might be fearful, it might be, I know this is good for me, but I have resistance to it. Psychedelics will teach you a lot about the resistance that you have inside of you. And well, how I've seen resistance in my own professional practice is resistance typically is at the root of all suffering, whether it's you're suffering from, a disease, you're resisting the disease for being in your body, whether you're suffering a loss, you are resisting the fact that that person's no longer in your life. Resistance truly is at the root of all suffering. And psychedelics teach you that resistance just goes out the you have no ability to resist when you're under psychedelics. So
Right.
you start to change your relationship with resistance when you're under the influence of psychedelics.
It seems to me with psychedelics, there is information to be gleaned from psychedelics because they certainly take you in a whole different direction. But psychedelics, to me, are more experiential than anything. And the learning is something my cognitive mind must supply. But it is taking me deep into an experience in ways in in ways that you would never anticipate.
Hmm.
You would never think it takes you into that experience, but you would never come that from or arrive at that from I know the people that really do. I've studied ayahuasca a lot, and I work with shaman, and I understand what they do, and it is they always do their sessions, and they want their people that are in a session to have an intent. What
Hmm.
is your intent? What are you working on? What are you doing? And so their users come into a group with an intent, and so that intent gets highly focused experientially, and the experience is in the form of who God knows what that experience is going to be,
Yeah.
but it's going to be different than what you've experienced before, giving you new insight.
I'm going to share a story with you. I'm going to say something and then I'll share a story. So, another motto that I live by is imaginal acts become facts. And so, the reason I say that is because there was a story I was listening to about this woman, and she was in the clinical trials for, I believe it was psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the clinical trials in 2018 because I was following this stuff really close back then. And she did a podcast that she was sharing her experience on, and she was a chronic cigarette smoker. I mean, probably for decades. I forgot the specifics of it, but certainly a long enough time where she was smoking longer than she wasn't smoking. And so she did it was one experience under psychedelics. It was assisted psychotherapy during her psychedelic
Oh,
experience.
really?
So there was a practitioner there that was, very much helping her frame her experience, helping
Mm-hmm.
her with the safety and the feelings and things like that. But in the podcast, she shared this story that always stuck out with me, and I'm kind of forgetting the details because it's been a long time since I've told the story. But essentially, she had a dream or an imaginal act, if you will, that a cigarette, like a big cigarette, and it didn't look like a pretty nice rolled cigarette, class A cigarette. It looked like a demon cigarette almost. Like it just had demonic energy. She said it had like decay and death and all of this stuff associated with it. And she had an experience with this imaginal cigarette in her psychedelic experience. And she came out of the experience, and one of the things that her psychotherapist recounted was the conversation about smoking after the experience. And she said something that'll always stick out with me. When the psychotherapist asked if she felt like having a cigarette, she recounted and she says, "Well, God, no. Smoking kills you. Why would I smoke?" And the funny thing about that always has stuck out with me is that that's like almost an answer you would get from like an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old,
Of
where
course.
they know
A
the
very
consequence.
naive approach.
Right.
A very innocent, new approach, fresh approach.
Very fresh and new, but also the relationship that individual had with cigarettes at 8 was the same relationship that she had with it coming out of the experience. And I think that's the most powerful thing about that story, because the relationship she had with smoking before the psychedelic experience was, this is who I am. This is a part of me. Again, it was those table legs that then said, I am a smoker. Like that identity that she was living
Right.
from, I am a smoker, I amness, was then supported by the habits. But what psychedelics do, I'm sure you've probably read into this, but what psychedelics do is they offer, imagine you're skiing and you go up to the mountain to the top of the ski slope and you ski down, and let's imagine you do that 2 million times. After a certain amount of times and you go down the same path, you're going to make these indentions in your
Mm-hmm.
path, and eventually you're just going to go straight to the top and follow the same path. Those are kind of like our thought patterns and our emotional patterns. Whereas when we're under the influence of psychedelics, the psychedelics kind of offer a blank sheet of snow, so that when we are lifted up to the top of that mountain, we have to choose now a new path. Our mind, our brain, however you put form to it, is forced to choose a new path. So it does. And as it chooses a new path or a neural pathway, it fires different neurons together during that same action, which then leads to different kind of internalizations and different ways that we relate to that action. And so, anyway, that's just a whole story of just really the the power that psychedelics do offer is still within inside of the humans without psychedelics. We can still tap into our conscious programming and our
Yeah.
subconscious programming and dissolve the programming and then choose which state of being to live from. And that disillusion of the programming is a challenge, and that is something I do help with as well. And a lot of it is, where's your resistance? Where are your limiting beliefs? What kind of language do you use when you describe yourself and you describe the world around you? And how does that language show me as a practitioner where you're trapped, where you're stuck, where you are in your own way?
That's beautiful. I'm looking at my notes and came from your guide, on the thing the information sheet about you, and it said one of the things that you focus on in your life's work is you talk about disrupting legacy systems.
Oh
And
yeah.
it seems to me that that's very tied to what you're saying right here. It is a legacy system that needs to be disrupted. And if it's the disruption is not bad. I mean, I'm a big believer in disruption,
Okay.
and that disruption is helpful. Is that creation comes from the beginning. Annihilation is the beginning of creation, and you talk about that. Talk to me about your disrupting legacy systems, because I think that has
Yeah.
a lot to do with the
Thank you for
smoking
giving me that time.
illustration you just
So,
used.
yeah. So, two things that I have on my agenda to disrupt. One of them is the healthcare system and the medical system here in America specifically. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to build a blockchain-based ecosystem that invites holistic practitioners, both them and individuals seeking alternative healing modalities together in an incentivized format where we reward businesses that have highly vetted and voted for products and services. So it's very much in the ecosystem that is supporting or voting for these products being, the cleanest, the healthiest, etc. We're kind of doing a more of like a for the people, by the people approach.
Mm-hmm.
Blockchain allows for decentralization, and I'm a big believer of decentralization. And then the other part about what I'm going to disrupt is the education system. I have been homeschooling my daughter for the last 3 years, and her mom and I have been homeschooling her this year. And I've built my own curriculum since 2020. So for the last 4 years, 5 years almost, I've been building my curriculum, and I've realized how many people appreciate what I'm teaching my child, what I'm teaching my daughter. And along the way, I've also seen a lot of other new schools pop up. So some of these schools teach what I teach in the form of stories. Some of the schools teach what I call, or what they call, the 2 hour learning method. And the 2 hour learning method obviously is integrated into AI, and artificial intelligence is basically helping the children on what to learn, and the humans are teaching the children really how to learn. That's kind of the model I like and appreciate more. And then in
Yeah.
my
Now, who
school,
teaches the what?
um, the AI teaches kind of what to learn, and the humans teach how to learn. So, like critical
Okay.
thinking and observational skills and human interaction skills, things like that. And then a big part of my private school is going to be centered around memory. I think a lot of my age group of adults have been taught that repetition is the father of learning. And although it can be, I certainly think that memory is more of the father of learning. uh, the example that, if you are in a real life situation or circumstance and you need to remember something, to recall that information, to use that information in real time to solve a problem, that is in and of itself memory. And so whatever you're learning, you will need to remember it in order to recall it in the future. And so the reason we don't hyper focus on cultivating our children's memory is beyond me. And so that's, in a nutshell, what my private school is going to be focused on.
That's
And
wonderful. That's wonderful, man.
thank you. And one of the other projects that is going to be built into the health insurance disruption model, this is one that's probably going to be launched before the end of the year. It is a lot of building on my end, and I've been in blockchain since 2017 as an investor and a builder since 2022. I had a cybersecurity company in the blockchain space in 2022, and I'm very familiar with decentralization, consensus protocols, consensus mechanisms, incentivization models, things like that that really get this Web3 world going.
Hmm.
What I want to build, and what I'm building right now, is I'm building an ecosystem that rewards people like myself to bring people together in the real world to teach them and to basically iron sharpening iron in a sense, to have like a collective getting together in person that teaches these freedom modalities and teaches these more holistic approaches to life and vitality and growth and personal development. And by incentivizing people like myself to bring people together in the form of events, I think we can create a network effect and pass this sort of knowledge and wisdom down at a much quicker pace. But also, there is an issue that I see where there's so many creatives out there, content creators out there that have a lot of great things to say. They have a lot of meaningful and transformative things and tools to teach. But we as a society now live in such a content heavy domain that context is really what's needed. Context that will take whatever information is floating in the ether and actually apply it to where we are in life to move us or move the needle forward. That's kind of what I see being a necessity in the marketplace going forward. It's been about access the past 2 decades as far as like Web 2 and social media and financial financial applications. It's all been about access, getting people on board and giving them access to alternative investments and things like that. But I see with the power of artificial intelligence that we are actually entering a new phase where it's going to be less about access because everyone's got the same access to the same things eventually. And it'll be more about how can this particular experience be molded into my growth trajectory, and that's context. And so the thing that I'm building with the bringing people together in the form of events is going to be more contextual with the technology that I'm implicating in the ecosystem as well.
That you know, you've mentioned it a couple of times, and it was going to be my follow-up question. So just I was right in line with the way you were thinking if there was going to be a follow-up question, and that is your interest in AI and its implications on humanity and purpose. Tell me about your relationship with AI, how you use AI. You know, we're reading so much today about the positives and negatives of AI, and the press loves the negatives because that's what sells. You know, if it
Yeah.
bleeds, it leads. And and I've been using AI for maybe 3 years, something like that, 3, 4 years. I use this, you know, I don't use Chat GPT or anything. I use this off the wall thing by LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman, and it's called AIPI. It's a personal assistant. It's
Mhm.
free, and we can chat. And I find nothing but beneficial. I find I can go there. Not only do I get information, but I get great conversation. It's like having a very, very bright friend that has access to all the knowledge in the world. It's just I love AI. So I don't know where you stand on that, and if I just flew right in the face of where you are on that, I don't know.
No, yeah. I think it's an important question, not just how I relate to it, but how its implication in the world is anticipated to be, I suppose. I do talk about this on other platforms where we have the way I look at AI is the mind, the human mind perfected. And if we look at AI as pure probability, whereas AI can analyze, it can anticipate, it can gather, it can predict, it can do all of these things way better than any human can do.
All based on data, though. So it is all limited on to data. That it's going
100%.
to be consistent with the data.
100%. So that as the data is important, the data is going to get better and more accurate, if you will. But the point is that the AI is the mind perfected, where it's pure probability. The difference that AI and humans, that in my professional opinion and my personal opinion, the difference is going to be can can AI with the vibrations and its programming, can AI exist in pure possibility the same way that humans can? And so I would, let me just back up. When On my journey of personal growth and development, one of the things that I've been taught to is to look for the universal perspective. So in meditation, it teaches you basically that you're not your thoughts and that you're not your feelings. You're the observer of those thoughts and feelings. And so as the observer, then what are you if you're not your thoughts and feelings experiencing? And so that's kind of the universal perspective.
Never heard that universal perspective, but that is that's a
I'm glad you like it.
fascinating question.
I'm glad you like it. So the goal of at least for me in my own journey, the goal for me in personal growth and personal development was to identify with identify with the observer perspective
Uh-huh.
more so than I'm not. And when I work on identifying from the spiritual being that I am instead of the human being that I am, I get closer to God, I feel. When I get closer to God, I allow for miracles to work in my life. And it's the very reason that I believe in miracles. Miracles to me is like the divine intervention. It's that which is unexplainable by probability. It's that which cannot be anticipated or assumed or predicted, right? It's a miracle. And so by definition, miracles can't exist in a place that's purely probability. And so the equal is true. If you're living in pure probability, then miracles just don't have space to work in your life, to work in your existence. And so I
Because
think
they're improbable.
because they're improbable. Exactly, exactly. So what I think the biggest difference between AI and humans is that I'm not sure AI is really ever going to be able to live in pure possibility. And we can get into why and debate, that for hours. But if we take that understanding, then I go to my approach to AI and my experience and my thoughts on AI. And so AI falls under the same category as does everything externally of me. Everything on the outside of me is a relationship that I have with inside of myself. And so AI is no different. AI is a relationship that I have internally, and I treat it as such. The place where I see a lot of people getting caught up is what can AI do to humanity? And because I believe in what's called the collective conscience,
Okay?
I believe that the more people that gain internal freedom, the more we will be a free species from the low vibrational feelings, emotions, thought patterns, and actions. And we'll be more aligned with the high vibrational feelings, emotions, thoughts, and actions like love, abundance, um, energy acceptance, things like that, that kind of vibrate higher on the spectrum. And so 6 months ago, I was someone who was totally in the scene of iRobot in my imagination more days than I wasn't. It was like, I have kids in the world and I need to prepare them for the world. I need to prepare them for the robots and all this other stuff. And what I realized was I was putting so much necessity on my existence, one, and two, going back to going back basically if I always expect AI or if I expect AI to only show up as either really good or really bad, or if I allow it to show up as some good and some bad, then that's how it's going to show up. But if I allow AI to show up in any way possible and I stop trying to mind it, basically I'd stop trying to use my mind to predict how AI is going to show up in my life, then I make room for AI and pure possibility to show up in any way in my life possible. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it's pure possibility. That's what pure possibility is. It could be either or. I don't know. And that's the beautiful part about the future is I don't know. And I can relate to that because I can accept that because there's no resistance to the future that I have anymore. And so, at the very least, regardless of what the listener's opinion or thoughts on are about AI, as long as you don't have resistance to that world that we're stepping into, that's where I would say if you do have resistance to it, you're probably internally suffering over what to predict or how to use it, or if am I not using it well enough in my life, that kind of thing. And so that's kind of what I would say about AI. It is a big conversation. I do like to talk about the probability versus the possibility and how
Yeah, I love
miracles
that too.
interact with that. And then also how it's just an external relationship that you have. So AI can be to you whatever it is you choose for it to be, but just don't allow the programming to overtake your experience with AI.
That's interesting. And it's about time to wrap up our show. But, what's interesting is your view on AI betrays your worldview on life.
Mm-hmm.
That the way you approach AI is the way you approach AI, with curiosity, with imagination, with possibility, with choice, with we are we do get to we have the privilege and the honor and the right to determine who we are
Yeah.
and to determine our future.
Yeah.
Trey Tiji, it is so great chatting with you. This has been a blast. This hour has just flown by.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
It sure
bro.
has.
Thank you for being on the show with me. I really appreciate it.
Charlie, it was a pleasure. I love talking about this stuff, and I appreciate the type of attentive host and thoughtful host that you are.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.